Welcome back to this episode of the Law of Relevancy podcast. I'm your host, Cord Owen, and today I'm joined by a guest that I have gotten to know over the last year or so. It has been a pleasure meeting Chip Webster and hearing about your latest project, Unity in Service. Chip, thanks for joining us.
My pleasure.
You know, one of the things that I do that I enjoy the most is be a part of Vistage. And I have an unbelievable amount of respect for our Vistage leader, who's a guy named Rolf Arnhem, who I think he's 93 years old now. Unbelievable amount of experience.
Yeah, I hired him.
Yeah, and you hired him.
He took over my group.
Yeah, so like one of the people I consider to be one of my mentors, you're his mentor. So like I feel like I'm talking like there's some kind of a Star Wars reference here of Obi-Wan Kenobi or something. But anyhow, thank you for joining us. And it's been a lot of fun learning about this passion project you have. Tell us a little bit about what Unity in Service is.
Well, I've, as you know, been traveling the last 5 years around and made 5 loops of the U.S. in my motorhome. And before that, I just felt this undertow of people becoming less and less trusting in the country. This has been going on for a long time. And when I was traveling, I would be in an RV park in Alabama or Utah or San Diego, and you just start talking to people, and everybody was just sort of disillusioned with the direction of the country and where we are. And occasionally I'd say, we have the government we deserve. And they would look at me like I had two heads. But this is a democracy.
Right.
And it's our government. We've elected them, and we've done a lousy job of electing people who are good stewards. Mm-hmm. And so I just started thinking, we need to get a movement, because the only people that can change this, Cords, are responsible citizens who are dedicated to keeping our democracy going. Either the government serves you or you serve the government. And right now we're going through a transition where the government has more and more power over us.
Yeah.
And ultimately, you're no longer a democracy.
Well, I think back in times when you follow these charts and they show how much people trust the government or trust the media or trust the Congress, and there were times in the last century where it was much higher. I'm thinking like the World War II era, and in time shortly around then, and then of course we went through the 60s where we had big problems and everything else. We got some of that back in the 80s and early 90s, but then we've kind of drifted off again. But it seems like there are events that can happen to us as a country where it triggers us to rally along with one another.
True. I've talked to a few people about that. Let me just give you some statistics. In 1958, 73% of the people thought the government was going in the right direction.
Yeah.
It's 21%
That's
now.
unbelievable.
That's Pew.
Yeah.
ABC did a poll about a year ago. 76% of the people think we're going in the wrong direction.
Yet we keep electing people that take us in the wrong direction.
What's a definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result? It's kind of like what we're doing. The other thing I thought was interesting is the media, and I think it was 78 was the last study done by Gallup, or they've tracked it since 78. And then it was in the 70s that 70%, that now it's 31% of the people think that the news is straight, and the rest either think part of it's a lie or all of it's a lie. And there's no such thing as a partial lie. Did
you see the article that Jeff Bezos just wrote?
No.
So in the opinion section, so a lot of the journalists were upset with him because he didn't endorse a candidate for president.
Right.
And so he wrote a long opinion piece in the Washington Post, because of course he owns it now. And he said, media shouldn't endorse. They should report.
Right.
Like because if media outlets endorse, then they're defining bias.
Right.
And so he was saying, he stepped back, he's like, we have a big problem because no one trusts the media any longer. And in order for people to trust us, we need to be independent arbiters of the truth.
Yeah, for fun, I circulate between Fox, MSNBC, and CNN. and it's hilarious. It's like they're not even talking about the same thing.
They'll talk about the exact same thing, and they're telling 5 totally different stories. It's people believe that it is propaganda more than ever.
Right. It's not sustainable.
Yeah,
because
it isn't.
The foundation of everything is trust. There's been some studies. We don't trust the government.
Yeah.
We don't trust the media. We can talk about military at some point in time. There's a lack of respect for that. And there was a survey done. I wish I had the numbers with me, but the trust in our neighbors is going down.
Yeah.
This can't work. Now, you talked about an event that would unite us. Right now, we're in a very serious situation with China, Russia, Iran, North Korea, the evil empire.
Yeah.
And there's no energy around uniting together.
Right.
In fact, I've had some people say, "Do we have the will to fight, to protect ourselves?" That's very scary. Well, freedom isn't free.
Well, a big part of having the will is trusting one another.
Exactly.
And wanting to be able to stick up. And I think this is one of the things about your project that you're working on that I like the most is there's a psychology around how to build trust with others, and it is working together. I mean, even we just got hit by 2 big hurricanes.
Right.
And even in our region here in Tampa Bay, we haven't been hit like that in 100 years. So obviously no one remembers it. But there's a lot of good that comes out of like just people being neighborly, people helping one another. I mean, just this last weekend, my neighbor and I cut down a big tree that was falling over in order to, make it safe. And there's a lot around that. And so tell us what you have in mind for how to use service to bring us together.
Well, there's 2 layers. One is that all of us need to go out and volunteer in the community. Whether it's Habitat for Humanity or the Red Cross or, pick your choice. But get out of the house, turn off the TV, and work with people different than you. We find out we're a lot more alike than we realize. And the second, which is probably the hardest sell, but one that we have to do, is mandatory national service. You turn 18 years old, you graduate from high school, you go work for the country for a year. Right now, people don't have sweat equity in our country. It's kind of like we're renting it. And nobody ever washed or rent a car. Well, that's the way we're treating it. And having driven around 39 states and 5 loops of the U.S., it's a mess. I mean, you drive along the highways, you go to California, and my favorite scene where I grew up is at a rest area, and there's a sign that says, $1,000 fine for littering. And there's just piles of trash around the sign. And I think that's symptomatic of where a lot of our country is. Each state's a little bit different. Utah is almost pristine. So it's about the local culture. I mean, at the end of the day, my vision is creating a culture of trust and respect. And that comes from what we talked about a second ago, and that's working together.
Yeah, and I think because we have a lot of diversity, we have a lot of people with different backgrounds, people with different cultures, there has to be a way to lower some of those barriers. And it seems like working together is really one of the best ways.
Absolutely. I think of my football team at Palm Springs High School. We had a very diverse population. We had Red Skelton's daughter, Dinah Shore's daughter, the Harpo Marx's kids. So you had these affluent, and then we had the maids. It was a very small area then, and their kids. And on the football field, we all came together and worked. And that's part of what's been in the back of my mind. We just have to get a leader or leaders that understand that and will work to that end.
Yeah. I do, in theory, like I hear what you're saying about national service. I don't know if that is something that could actually happen. I know that there are some countries that have that.
80 countries have
Wow. 80 countries. And at what age groups do they do that?
Typically, it's in the late teens, 20s. I forget which country it is, but you go in the service for a year, and then you're in the reserves till you turn 70.
Yeah. Wow.
But if you think about what's going on in the world, especially in Western Europe versus Eastern Europe, we're not anywhere close to being prepared. 77% of the kids that are not draft age, but military age to go into the military cannot qualify because of either drugs or obesity or other health reasons. 10 years ago, 80% of the military would recommend that their kids go into it. It's now 62 because they don't trust the leaders. I mean, it's a serious problem. And I think that I'm trying to articulate that we're the only ones we have a problem, and we're the only ones who can fix it. And the only way we're going to fix it is get off our couch, turn off the TV, and get out in the community.
Yeah. What are some other things that you've done in the community over the years?
Well, right now I'm involved with Tampa Bay Watch pretty heavily. Mm-hmm. Actually volunteering and planting seagrass and making oyster.
You used to live
shovels.
right by that organization. I always had a lot of respect for what they do.
Yeah, and I'm vice chair. I'll be chair next year.
Wow.
I was on the board of the Central Florida Urban League for 7 years. Mm. I've always tried to have something I was doing, even when I was at Sears and a young guy in Chicago. I was a high Y counselor in Waukegan. We did some camps together.
Can you think of any stories of times when you've done things like what you're recommending in this book, besides playing football, like where you've worked in the community and it's made a difference, bringing together people?
Well, I certainly, the mission at Central Florida Urban League was education, employment, and entrepreneurship. So focusing on that, getting people out of the cycle of poverty.
Right.
In my role as a chair, I was counseling CEOs, and on more than one occasion, they would have a serious personal problem. I had one guy who was an alcoholic, and he had to leave the group because he could never show up to the meetings. But I got him to go to AA, and 5 years later, I get a phone call from out of nowhere and say, "You saved my life." So, my mission of helping people see their potential started in the 70s when I was in direct selling. And I can remember very clearly sitting in Thousand Oaks, California, overlooking the 101 at 2 a.m. in the morning, watching the cars go by on the freeway and saying, I'm here to make a difference. And so everything I do, that's why when I found Vistage, it was perfect. It was like, this is the job for me. I was also worked with AMI kids, helping them. But like I said, I always try to have one or two things. I've also started, this is a nonprofit, Unity and Service. And then I have another nonprofit called Keepers of the Flame that I started 22 years ago. This is for chairs like Rolf, who've been chairing for 10 years, to get together every year in Boulder. And running a business, that it's lonely at the top at times. You're the only one that can make certain decisions. Well, it's also lonely at the end of the table with 15 other CEOs.
Yeah.
So this is where we get together and help each other become better, more effective. Vistage chairs.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of trust. I mean, even in those meetings where we kind of share what's going on in our businesses, like there's work getting done in those meetings.
Absolutely. And my favorite Vistage meeting, if I can.
Yeah, of course.
We had a member of he's passed on, Terry Aidman, and we had a guy that owned the largest pipe manufacturer in the state, Kel Williams. And he came to the meeting and said, I'm going to go sell my business. I'm meeting with the buyers tomorrow. And Kel had been in the group about 10 years, and I knew, about what he would take for it. And it was he said he was going to ask 22, but I knew he'd take 18. So I stopped the meeting and I said, how many of you think he should represent himself? Nobody raised their hand. How many think he should hire somebody to represent him? Terry Aidman was in the group. When the buyer said, we want to see all your books, he said, I'm going to give you one number, how much concrete we buy. He got $36 million.
Wow.
I mean, it's just things like that, to me, are fun.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the kind of thing that people don't realize, the value that you get out of a round table, out of a group of peers. It's like a board of directors, but it's like everyone in that meeting is paying to be there a substantial amount of money on a depending on how big your business is, but it's a significant subscription rate, and you are there to help the other people in the room. You are there to listen. Everybody takes it seriously. And there is some fantastic advice like that comes out of like meetings, that can make major differences in people's careers, lives, businesses, because it's not always a business thing that people are working on.
Oh no, we had divorces and all sorts of things that we would rally around and help somebody go through.
Chip, a lot of people don't know that you're actually, you are a very introspective person. This isn't your first book. This is your fourth book? Third book. And the other two books are about poetry.
Well, they're poetry centric.
Yeah.
The first one was sort of a autobiographical, philosophical ramblings, mostly poems. And the second one was just sort of a fun experiment I did with an artist called Paint and Poetry. And I'd write a poem, he'd do a little painting. He'd do a painting, I'd write a poem. And we published that. It's been a lot of fun.
That's super creative. I mean, and the reason I'm bringing that up is because you're talking about solving problems. You're talking about creative ways to address issues. And, working together may heal some of the fabric of what we have going on in the country, but it is an important first step.
Absolutely.
It definitely seems like it is an important first step to solving a lot of problems, even if there's a ton of complexity that goes along with all the issues. Obviously, you may never get there, but it does seem like a very, very important next step. How important is it? You've started this organization. It's an official nonprofit. You're a leader. You've got all this career experience. How do you take a concept like this and say, okay, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to form a nonprofit. I'm going to name it. I'm going to write the book. I'm going to start doing the outreach. Like, what is it in you that helps you, help others hear? What does it take to do that type of thing?
Well, I'll share a short poem I wrote.
Okay.
I was at a retreat on Whidbey Island in the San Juans, and one of the assignments was write a poem. I write a poem. And this came out, and it's really sort of my philosophy. And the name of the poem is Act Now. When I act, the universe provides all I need. When I act, doors open, help arrives. And when I act, the unknown becomes known. And I guess the only thing I can say about my philosophy is keep moving.
Yeah.
Not even God can steer a parked car. And so that's part of the problem we have in our society today, is people are waiting for somebody to do something for them. And one of my members who actually ran AMI Kids for years used to say, nobody's going to save your ass but your ass. Well, nobody's going to save our country but us.
Yeah.
Responsible citizens.
I think you hit the nail on the head. It is that momentum. It's that taking a step. Like, in order to do anything, you have to take that very first step. And it actually gets easier and easier as you continue to do it. A friend of mine was an NHL goalie. And the goalies, obviously they have to move on ice.
Right.
And he has a saying, and he follows that philosophy. He says it differently. He says first momentum, then direction.
Yeah.
And it's the act of momentum. It's the act of creating a direction. It's that vector. It's that movement that then gives you clarity on how to turn. I have another friend who's like, first direction, then velocity. But how do you know?
You don't.
You can just analyze forever.
Yeah. No. You got to act. You got to get off the couch. You got to turn off the TV or the game and go get outside. There was a series of book covers that were all tongue-in-cheek, and one of them was "Just Go Outside."
Yeah, just go outside.
Right.
That's funny.
No, you gotta do something. And this is the launch. I mean, you and I are having the launch meeting right now, whether you know it or not. I got the book, which you helped me with, and now it's showtime. And as soon as we get them all published, the website will roll. and we'll see. Run the flag up the flagpole, see if anybody salutes. But something will happen, and I don't know what it is, but it'll be good.
And so give us the framework for this mission. Tell us, so sell it to us. What are we doing, and what is it going to look like?
Well, what I'm trying to do is get people involved, engaged in community service, but also talk to them about, and it's in the book, about what does a responsible citizen look like. And an example is critical thinking. Look at what a politician does, not what they say.
Yeah.
And it's like a no-brainer, but a lot of people don't do that. But make your own list. Make your list of what are the things that the country should do. So, to me, it's national defense and safety. The second is infrastructure, so we can have commerce, so we can have the money to buy the food, education, the basics.
The basics.
You need to understand those. And then you have to say, here's the criteria for the person I'm going to vote for. Honest, does what they say they're going to do, puts nation ahead of party. That's the biggest problem we're having right now. So it's in the book, so here's sort of a blueprint. Make your own list, own your list, but make it.
Yeah.
So when you make a decision about who you're going to vote for, and vote, 66% of the people voted in the last presidential election. Less than 50%, I think it was around 48, 45%, voted in the off-year elections. That you're sending the whole Congress with less than half the people.
That's right.
One of the statistics I love is when you look at, what do you think of Congress? I mean, their ratings like in the sub-teens.
Yeah, it might be 11.
Yeah, and then it's, what do you think of my congressman's okay, or my congrwoman's okay.
Right, of course. Well, everyone's for term limits except for their congressman.
Right, exactly.
Right. Yeah.
So, it's get engaged. We have the government we deserve. I guess if there was any message that I have, is it's the whole foundation of life. I mean, you and I have trust.
Sure.
Deb, and I have trust. My family has trust. My community has trust. But the further out you go, the lower the trust is. We're dysfunctional. We're like a dysfunctional family.
Well, hopefully we can take some steps to heal some of that. I'm optimistic we potentially could turn things around here next week. But tell us a little bit about what you have planned to promote this programming and to get your book out there.
Well, first of all, it's get the website going, then start promoting it through other podcasts, through my friends, and who do you know, like I did with Rolf and you, and it's a ground game, starting with me, and seeing where it goes. I don't have the financial wherewithal this time to run a full page ad in the New York Times, but if you donate, let's do that. What can we do to get people to think about, it's my country. The government's not going to help me. The government reports to me. I don't report to the government. Getting rid of there's a great book out now, overturned by Neil Gorsuch, talking about the bureaucracy. And it's not sustainable.
Yeah.
And when are we going to start doing zero-based budgets and look at everything line item? When you look at all these bills that get passed, and the next 10 things are just worthless, but it's for my community, so I'll vote for it. Right. And we're broke. We are financially broke. If you look at countries with high inflation and high debt, eventually they dissolve.
It never goes well.
It doesn't go well.
Never goes well. We've got thousands of years of track record that never goes well.
It doesn't work. It doesn't end well.
Yeah, it doesn't. So tell us a little bit more. I'd love to get a little bit more perspective about how long you've been thinking about this, and in a little bit of if there's any stories in your past that kind of started the spark of this whole thing.
What a great question. It's been in the back of my mind for a long time, 20 plus years. I felt this trend. Yeah, you've maybe heard it said before, culture eats strategy every time. And I could see this divisiveness. The politicians divide us, the press divides us, and it's not sustainable. So it's been kind of in the back of my mind. But I was busy running a company and trying to.
But the theory is similar to like your football analogy. Like, right. I remember, like, I actually played football myself. I remember, like, I went to a very diverse high school when it comes to cultures and right. types of kids. Like, some of the kids were in military. Some of them were like the families didn't have a lot of money. Some of the people had lots of money. It was the whole thing. But like, when we all got together in that locker room and we all got out there on that field, you were blocking together, you were attacking together, you were tackling together. Like, it's everyone had to work together as a team. And it's that essence that you're talking about in this book. And you're trying to scale that out nationally.
Yes. Marshall McLuhan said, we're all on spaceship Earth together. None of us are passengers. We're all crew. And everybody has equity in this. Everybody in this country has equity in it. And so I guess my goal is to shout it from the mountaintops and wake up some people. And we only need to wake up maybe 5 or 10% to get started. As I recall, and a historian will maybe correct me, but in the Revolutionary War, a third of the people were really ready to fight. A third were just watching, and a third were Tories.
Yeah,
And I just reread the Declaration of Independence, which I put in the book because I think it's important for us to all know it. They pledged their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honors.
Everything.
5 of them were captured, tortured, and killed.
Right.
A couple of them lost kids. A number of them lost their fortunes and never regained it.
Yeah.
Freedom isn't free, and we will lose it if we don't grab it by the neck and get us out of where we are right now.
I mean,
we're going the wrong direction.
It is a wake-up call. I know it's not on the same level of like the sacrifices that some of the people that signed the Declaration of Independence made, but like even at our business right here, I have 3 team members who one person lost everything, all their possessions, cars, everything in their house gone, totally gone in the storms. One team member lost like both their vehicles, everything in the garage. Another guy had like 3 feet of water in his apartment. I mean, just like that.
Right.
Like in a matter of like 3 or 4 days, like, hey, we see the storm coming. Is it going to be that bad? Whatever. Don't know. We'll ride it out like we always do. And then boom, life can just turn on a dime and you could lose everything. And so it is significant that, you have people that willfully go into risking everything, to create this country that we have, where we have all this opportunity because of the foundation for what they laid out for us. We need to take good care of it.
I mean, you've started businesses. I've started businesses. We both know that you have to put it all in. You have to put it all on the table. And that's true with our country. There's a great line from The Sun Also Rises by Hemingway, and I'll butcher it probably a little bit, but the question was asked, how did you go bankrupt? Gradually, then suddenly.
Yeah, exactly, suddenly.
And how do you lose a country? Gradually and suddenly. And that, I don't want my kids or my grandkids or great grandkids to say, why didn't you do something?
Yeah, well, debt equals leverage. And so the more debt we have, the more leverage other people have over us in our organization. And so I was just looking at the timeline of Venezuela the other day, and it was interesting because Venezuela was one of the richest countries in like the Western Hemisphere, like unbelievably wealthy with all the natural resources, and it's like all of a sudden they took a turn, and it just went suddenly terrible really fast. They arrested the opposition politicians. They totally lost control, price fixing, whatever. And then it's just like, boom, it's just been horrible ever since.
I would love your source on that.
I'll send it to you. I would love a graphic.
Yeah.
But it is, it could easily happen here. I mean, people don't think it can, but it really can.
Right. We're at war with the evil empire, the Axis I talked about.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't even, most people would say, no. We're the United States of America. Nobody's going to mess with us. Not so. They're messing with us right now.
Yeah.
The fact they're trying to influence our elections, the fact that they're spying on us, the spy balloon.
Dividing us.
Yeah. That's really what I think a lot of these, it's divide and conquer. That's talking about basic rules of
That's right.
war and life.
It's demoralizing.
Yeah. So we need to get ourselves energized and love our country. I was just in Annapolis, Maryland about 4 weeks ago. And there's a restaurant there. I can't think of the name of it right now. Chicks, I think. At 9 o'clock in the morning, everybody stands up and pledges allegiance to the flag. and 10 o'clock on the weekends.
Yeah.
It was fabulous.
That is interesting.
I mean, I admit I'm kind of a wuss. I mean, I was watching the opening for the World Series, not the rappers. I turned off my sound for that. But when they sing the national anthem, that girl who sang the first one at the Dodger Stadium with the kids from, I think it was Boys and Girls Club or something. I mean, this is what it's about.
Yeah.
I am an unashamed patriot. And we all should be. We can have our differences. This is a pluralistic society. If one party dominates, it's not a democracy anymore. That's probably what happened in Venezuela. I'm really anxious to study that. But if we have a group of people on the moderate left, moderate right, that understand what's at risk, we can save it.
Yeah. Well, prosperity, there's a saying that or a meme that I've seen where it's like prosperity creates, like there's a comfortableness. There's like this short-term memory we have where we think it's always going to be this prosperous. So it's like prosperity creates, or hard times create strong men. Then it's strong men create, better times. Good times create weak men. Weak men create bad times. And we're probably in one of those periods where we've had so much prosperity in this country that it's there's a lot of comfort and laziness that we get.
You're right on.
Because we haven't lost everything in a long time. We haven't gone through a major event
and
in
I've
a long
got
time.
Alexander Tytler's Life Cycles of a Democracy in here.
Yeah.
And just basically what you just said.
Yeah.
And, the thing that has to happen is for us to understand what's at risk. We don't understand that. Alfred Nobel said that unearned wealth dulls the senses. And that's exactly what you just said, that unless you had to dig for it. I mean, one of the greatest gifts I got as a kid, we were living in Burbank, and my dad was vice principal of the high school, and we had a house and with an apricot tree. I wasn't in school yet. It's preschool. And my job was to pick up the apricots. And one day I blew it off. And my dad said, no working, no eating. Go to bed, no dinner.
Wow.
That has stuck in my head for 70 some odd years. And it's true. That's the reality of life.
It is. And, even if you think about that scenario as a father, could you imagine telling like your kid, sorry, like could you imagine like the discipline your dad also had to have to remember to check that tree to see if there were apricots on the ground, and knowing that at some point he may have to enforce like that lesson, but it was going to be good for you.
Yes. I mean, I hated school. Turns out I'm dyslexic and have ADD and all sorts of things that entrepreneurs usually have. And so I got through school and I just would work. It was work hard. And that's and I'm a happy camper based on where I've arrived, based on the work I did.
That's right.
I'm not done yet, though. I just was a high school reunion, and so many people are just passing time now at this stage in life, and it's depressing. We have great national resources and people that have retired, brilliant people,
absolutely,
hard workers, and
all the experience. We're
not tapping it.
Well, maybe some of those folks can help be mentors in your program.
Exactly.
Well, Chip, thanks for coming in today. It's been very interesting to learn about what you're doing with Unity and Service, and hopefully inspiring to others to learn more. And I know I'm excited to follow what you're going to do, because of all the things you've done in the past, like, you're entirely capable of turning it into a national movement.
Well, thank you, and I really appreciate your help and support.
You're welcome. It's been a pleasure. The website, what is the website going to be? Is it unityandservice.com?
Yes. Oh, I'm sorry, unityandservice.org.
.org. Unityandservice.org is where we'll go.
Right.
And we will follow you there. We'll keep track of what you're doing. And you can follow us anywhere where podcasts are found, on the Law of Relevancy website, as well as Bake More Pie's website. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time.